Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast, where we provide you with your weekly diagnosis of everything fantasy football. Whether it's season-long leagues, dynasty, DFS, or sometimes even IDP, we got you covered all year long. Let's do it. Let's get to it. Welcome into the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast. It is Thursday, September 21st, and I'm your host, Jon Jeune. Don't have my guy Greg Pennamon with me today, but don't worry about that. Got my guy Bruce on the loose. You can find him on Twitter at Blake_Bruce, where he is a doctorate of pharmacy, follower of Christ, inspiring entrepreneur and investor, church league hooper. Can't leave that part out. Also, sports card collector. So if you want to follow him on Twitter to get anything on the latest that has to do with sports cards, or you're interested in buying sports cards, or just learning about them, make sure you reach out to him at Blake_Bruce on Twitter. Bruce, appreciate you coming on, man. How you doing today, bro?
Good, man. Thank you so much for the opportunity. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah, man. I hit you up on Twitter yesterday. You said you would be interested in coming out. So, excited to talk about this next slate of games here. Obviously, if you are a longtime listener of the Fantasy Football Diagnostics Podcast, then you obviously know you can follow us on Apple Podcast platforms, Google Play, Spotify, all that fun stuff. You can also watch us live on Twitter, Twitch, and YouTube. Feel free to comment, like, subscribe, all that fun stuff. Also, feel free, if you are watching us live, comment in the show, interact with us a little bit. We'll answer any questions that you may have, start sit questions, Thursday night, however you want to deal with it. Just one thing to note, because it is Thursday. I'm going to say this almost every Thursday, unless I forget, but take those Thursday night players out of your flex spot, put them into, if you're playing, you got a running back, you picked up Matt Breida because you're desperate, you're playing him tonight. Make sure he's in a running back slot, not your flex, because you want to maintain that flexibility. If you're playing in super flex leagues, Daniel Jones may be a QB2 for you, but make sure he's in the quarterback one slot so you can have your second quarterback in that super flex spot, right? So just be mindful of that. But obviously, it is our game previews part 2. We're going to break down all the afternoon games and the primetime games, as well as get into some of my starts of the week this week. So without further ado, let's just jump into the first game which we're discussing today, which is the 0-2 Carolina Panthers traveling to Seattle to take on the 1-1 Seattle Seahawks. One thing to note, Bryce Young, the rookie quarterback, missed his second day of practice today. So it's 2 in a row for him, making it less likely that he might be out there on Sunday. So just something to monitor there as it pertains to the game. But this total has this game has a 42.5 point total, and the Carolina Panthers are 5.5 point road dogs here, according to FanDuel Sportsbook. Bruce, as it pertains to the over, and the spread and who's going to win this game, where do you have this game fitting in?
Yeah, no, actually, I had a note of that as well. So it looks like Andy Dalton could start this game, which changes a lot for me. And you could see some line movement there. So right now I do like the under 42.5. I think Seattle should be able to just run the ball in this game and kind of turn the clock. And not sure what Carolina's game plan is going to be, but I don't know if it'll be that great, especially if it's Dalton. So I do like the -5.5 for Seattle right now too, especially if you're trying to get like your early parlays in.
Yeah, definitely agree with you on all of that there. I'm taking the under here, taking Seattle to cover, and also taking Seattle to win this game. Like you said, the rookie quarterback there, even if it's not the rookie quarterback, Andy Dalton's coming in.
Yeah.
I mean, Andy Dalton does add somewhat of a veteran presence, right? Maybe, settle them down a little bit, get them in and out of plays. They can actually run the QB sneak without having to sub in a quarterback. I don't know if you saw that, but yeah. They don't feel comfortable running the quarterback sneak with Bryce Young because he's not big enough.
That's crazy to me.
Yeah, absolutely crazy. But anyways, besides the point there, Andy Dalton does change the dynamic maybe just a little bit. I don't think by too much there, but like you said, you could see some line movement. But in regards to the fantasy, the fantasy analysis here on the Carolina side, right? Miles Sanders, he's the number one running back. Chuba Hubbard does eat into his work a little bit, so I would recommend picking up Hubbard there, in leagues. But where do you see Miles Sanders fitting in amongst running backs this week?
I'm pretty low. I don't really want to start him in any league. Obviously, like deeper leagues, you probably will start him. But yeah, I feel like, if he stays healthy all year, he might not even reach his last year's numbers at all. And I do feel like Chuba Hubbard at some point will like start a game or is going to be relevant. So I definitely agree with adding him in leagues.
Yeah, we definitely want to stay ahead of some of these, these waiver wire transactions, right? We want those guys on our team so that we don't have to burn the waiver priority or spend the fab.
Yep.
So, if something does happen to Miles Sanders, which we never wish injury on anybody, it's just part of the game, right? We're playing a game of probability. Running backs have a higher probability of being injured. So it makes sense. And he has been banged up throughout not even just his career, but just this offseason in general too. So Chuba Hubbard's getting enough work that makes you believe that they actually believe in him. So if Miles Sanders were to go down, you might see, less of a backfield split here and more of more of a role here for Chuba Hubbard. But besides the point, Hayden Hurst, he plays tight end. We always say if they play tight end, they're usually, in consideration for you. Is Hayden Hurst somebody that you're looking to play this week?
Yeah, I like him actually quite a bit. Not like that much, but he looked good week one and he kind of just dudded us last week. So like I feel like he would be getting way more value and talked about more as being a tight end. I mean, tight end's just so ugly right now. And he looks good. I mean, he has chemistry with Young, it seems. And if Dalton comes in, I mean, he's going to get work. So I like him this week as like a, tight end 10 to 12 or like a DK, $3,000 probably. I haven't checked his value, but something like that.
Yeah, I totally agree. He is my tight end stream of the week this week.
Nice.
So I guess we're on the same page there. Yeah. So I definitely do like him. And like you said, if Dalton comes in, I feel like I like him more. I don't know.
Yeah, why. No, I think I might love him if Dalton's playing. Did they not play together in Cincinnati?
I don't think so because
they never crossed paths.
Yeah, they never crossed paths. Hurst just got to Cincinnati last year. That was his first year at Cincy. But yeah, no. What about Thielen and Shark and the rest of this passing game? Are you buying in whether or not Dalton plays?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, I think you have to like this offense passing wise more if Dalton's playing, which is it's crazy to me. But I wasn't big on Bryce Young coming into the draft, anyways. I had him third out of the big three. But I actually like Thielen. I took him a lot in best ball. He was kind of just been like a dark horse sleeper for me all year, and he looked great last week. And if Dalton's throwing it to him, he's going to be a wide receiver, 2 or 3 in deeper leagues. He's going to be valuable.
Yeah, I totally agree. He was somebody that I was targeting late in drafts. He was basically for free, right?
Yeah, it was crazy.
You're getting him as like wide receiver, like 55 at that point. Like you might as well pull the trigger. Expected to be the number one target. But like you said, if Dalton plays, you could sell me in a story here where him and Dalton, they've got the veteran chemistry going on. Like they're just on the same page about a lot of the different things here. So. I actually picked up Dalton in the Superflex League last year when he had like a spot start with the Saints, I think, on like a Thursday night. And it worked out really well. I think he had like 3 or 4 touchdown passes in that game. So, hey, you might get a similar spot start here from him this week. All right, let's move on to the Seattle side. Geno Smith, where does he fit in for you amongst the quarterback position?
I like him this year a lot, actually, especially with the weapons he has, and adding Jackson Smith-Njigba is a huge get for them. And he was already great last year, so I was doubling down on Geno. I mean, you were getting him pretty late in drafts, but I don't see how he doesn't finish like top 10 in most leagues. He runs a little bit too, and the weapons are just so good.
Sorry, I was muted.
Oh no, you're good.
Is he a QB1 or QB2 territory for you this week, or how do
this week? Yeah, I think they'll beat Carolina up pretty bad. So I like him a lot this week. I'd probably say he's QB1 in most of your leagues.
Yeah, I probably have him closer to a higher end QB2 just because I think this game gets away from Carolina a little bit.
Fair.
But if you do get a back and forth nature to it, I could definitely see Geno having a nice day. I just, like you said earlier at the top, I think that Seattle just kind of runs the ball down their throat, and Kenneth Walker, I think, is definitely RB1 territory for me this week. DK and Tyler Lockett, it's hard to rank them because, like, statistically, they'll have almost similar stat lines by the end of the season. It'll just be who scored more touchdowns. And so I'm going to rank them at both as wide receiver 2s, but both equally have wide receiver 1 upside if they have the game like Tyler Lockett had last week where he's, catching 2 touchdown passes.
No, I like both those guys a lot. I've always been a huge DK fan personally, but Tyler Lockett is just – he's the guy. And like you saw last week, he just gets open in the red zone, and I think you could make a case for him rest of the year being better than DK, but DK just – red zone upside and the explosion upsides, there's not many guys that have that wide receiver 1 upside like DK does, but he is a pain to own week to week.
Yeah, definitely. And then JSN, I know he's obviously highly touted, but it's so hard to play him right now. Do you view him purely as a stash at this point?
Yeah, you have to. I mean, try to buy low in Dynasty. I mean, everything coming out on him, he's one of the best prospects. Ohio State wide receivers have just been great, and he's one of the better ones. And his route tree coming out was one of the best as a prospect, and he's just kind of buried right there, which was kind of a question mark entering the year for him. But it's even worse than we imagined, I think, right now.
Yeah, I mean, it's going to be tough. I don't think we'll see, even in a game like last week where it was competitive back and forth. You think, all right, this is the time JSN is going to really show out and make some plays, but that didn't quite happen there. So, him and Zach Charbonnet, I think they're purely stashes at this point. If they're on your waivers, I think they need to be on your roster, on your bench. But we just have to accept the reality that we can't extract any fantasy value from them at this point in time.
Now, DK is a little banged up. I don't think he practiced today or he limited today, so that's to monitor. And I mean, if he misses time, then Lockett's definitely wide receiver 1, and then I think you just throw Jackson Smith in your lineup if DK is out.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, if DK misses time, I think JSN immediately slides in as like a wide receiver 3 with some significant upside there just because the talent is so good.
He's great.
Yeah.
It's a matter of time.
Yep. All right, let's move on to this next matchup here. We've got the 0-2 Chicago Bears traveling to Kansas City, Arrowhead Stadium, to take on the 1-1 Kansas City Chiefs. This game has a 42.5-point total, where the Chiefs are 12.5-point favorites at home against the Chicago Bears. There's obviously been a lot of stuff happening in Chicago right now between, Justin Fields calling out the coaching to saying he didn't call out the coaching, and then we all took it out of context, even though there was no context. The question was asked, what's the problem? And he said, I'm paraphrasing here, but he said coaching, one-word answer. There was nothing to take any context from. And then obviously the situation we're on, the defensive coordinator, that nobody has any idea what's going on. We're hearing all these rumors. But anyway, besides the point, Bruce, where are you going with this game as it pertains to the spread and the total and who's going to win?
Yeah, so I think currently it was 12.5. I like minus 12.5. I did note that if it gets to 15 plus, I do think I like the Bears. I know, as crazy as it sounds, I think they're in a play up spot. I feel like a lot of teams, when they lose a coach, especially with just this situation, they got punched in the mouth last week, but it's only week 3. And the Chiefs have just not shown us anything. So I knew that, the narrative is they're just going to come in, they're going to roll, they're going to be back to the Kansas City Chiefs we all know and love. But I think it could be another, mediocre game from them, and they just cover, or they just get by on, winning by 13 or 14.
Yeah, I definitely could see that side of it. It's like Chicago, you want them to be this competitive offense that can, keep pace with Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs, but they haven't shown us anything through 2 weeks that suggests that they could do that. Especially when you look at the matchups that they played, right? Like they played against, last week it was Tampa Bay, which that's not a team that you think should overly dominate the Chicago Bears. And then, Green Bay, another team that shouldn't overly dominate them, yet they were dominated in both of those games, which just kind of makes you think that this game might not be that much different. But like you said, the Chiefs, they're having their own struggles as well.
Yeah.
I am going to take the under here. I will take the Chiefs to cover the 12.5. I will take the Chiefs to win this game here. As far as the fantasy side goes, Justin Fields, I think because of what he can do with his legs, I think you have to have him in your lineup as a borderline quarterback one. We've seen this happen multiple times with Justin Fields where he starts out the season very slow, and then we end up as a community giving up on him, dropping him, and then 2 weeks later he becomes like the waiver wire pickup of the week because the Bears decide that, hey, let's start running the ball with our quarterback because he's really good at that. How do you view Justin Fields this week in the matchup against the Chiefs?
No, kind of like you just said, like we've seen this movie before. I unfortunately did drop him in a couple leagues last year. He was like my upside quarterbacker, and then I dropped him, and I think I ended up with like Marcus Mariota for a few weeks, and then Fields went nuts, and I think he got ranked like top 2 at Dynasty buy at a point. Like, so I mean, you got to just think that it's going to be better days for him, and his explosiveness. I mean, I haven't seen a quarterback like him since Mike Vick, just with the running, with the legs. So you got to start him every week, and I mean, in buy low, if people are really considering dropping him or trading him for pennies on the dollar, then give me Justin Fields. He's still got top 5 upside with those legs.
Yeah, I mean, if we're talking about buying him right now, right? Like, I think Dynasty scares me just because of a lot of the things that are going on.
Yeah,
right? Like I want to buy him to a point, but super flex leagues, I will 100% buy Justin Fields.
12-team leagues.
12-team super flex, I'm 100% buying Justin Fields, right? In a 12-team one quarterback league, there's a chance that he might just get dropped. Somebody gives up. In super flex, no one's ever going to drop him. But if you can buy low on Justin Fields in sort of, in your super flex league, I think that's something that would totally get done right now. At wide receiver, we saw DJ Moore have some life last week. Is that a trend you believe continues this week against the Kansas City Chiefs?
I don't know. I have him as a question mark play in this game, honestly. I feel like he's just been this his whole career where he flashes and then then the next game gets 3 catches for 30 yards. And he's just always – I've never been a fan of him personally, and he just seems overhyped every year. I get it with the upside, but I don't see it this week. I think that, the Chiefs will have to game plan it against him and, make Fields beat them somehow the other way. What, Chase Claypool, Cole Kmet, like just let those guys beat us.
Yeah, I am going to have him as a low end, wide receiver 2, high end wide receiver 3. He is the number 1 target for Justin Fields.
Yep.
In terms of like, if you were looking at the best players on this team, who do you want to feed the ball to more often than not, right? It should be DJ Moore.
He has 8 targets on the year, though.
That's the tough part, right?
Like, what happened week 1?
Yeah. So that is tough, but he did make a concerted effort last week, right?
Yeah.
The start of the game, they were going to DJ Moore like right away. So I think we get more of that. Fields talked about being him, going back to playing like himself, which I think means more moving around, more off schedule plays, which I think DJ Moore would benefit from as well. So I think, it is scary to play him unless you have better options, but he's going to be in my rankings this week as a low end wide receiver too.
No, that's fair.
Running back situation.
Said something about he felt like it was robotic, the play calls or something. So, I mean, you got to let him improvise, and I feel like DJ Moore fits that. He's a on the move, improvised player. Like, so the pluses match up. So it should be better days ahead.
Definitely. What about running back? Khalil Herbert, is the lead guy. We obviously last week we saw that they made Deontay Foreman a healthy scratch, which then made people think that, hey, Khalil Herbert to the moon potentially. Yeah. Roschon Johnson could slide in as the number 2 on this depth chart. How do you view this backfield breaking down ahead of this matchup?
If you have to start one of them, start Herbert until they prove Roschon is going to get more work. That might be not till like week 8 or, I still love Roschon's upside. But I'm starting Herbert if you have to in most leagues. I don't like him in this game much. Fields is probably going to eat into a lot of his work if they get near the goal line. But yeah, if you have to start Herbert, I'd say he's good for 8 points, but I don't love him.
Yeah, it's I don't love Herbert, but I'm actually like buying into the idea that I would play Roschon. Like you could play Roschon in this game. And it sounds scary on the surface, but if you just think about the fact that the Bears they've been vocal about their wanting Khalil Herbert to be better in the pass game, especially his pass protection, which is something that Roschon does well. And then he has been involved in this offense, has been seeing 25% of the team rush attempts, roughly 25%. That's what he saw last week with Deontay Foreman out. And then is still seeing like a very healthy 13% target share in the offense. I think there's a situation where 12.5-point dogs, they get pass happy very early, and maybe that means more Roschon Johnson on the field and more opportunities for him. But I think that's purely like very deep leagues, like 14, 16 team leagues. Like you're desperate for a flex, or you're desperate for an RB2. Maybe like in DFS, you want to go play him in DraftKings because there's an opportunity he gets some receptions. That's really where I'm thinking about him. But he's somebody I think needs to be rostered and on your bench ahead of this matchup for sure.
No, absolutely. I mean, if he is playing that much on third down, then the narrative will be there at some point where they're down big in this game. They might pound Herbert early and stay close. The Chiefs are vulnerable to the run, but the Bears O-line's messed up and it's going to be bad. So you might be right. And get Roschon the ball anyways.
Yeah, that part.
Absolutely.
Any interest in Cole Kmet? I feel like
I liked him coming into the year, but I'm off.
Yeah, I think I need to see more from this pass offense before I start trying to buy into more pieces of it.
He's got an ugly contract too, right?
Yeah. All right, let's talk about Kansas City. And obviously, Mahomes, great matchup. He's probably, if game script wasn't a question, you'd say quarterback 1 on the week, no questions asked. Travis Kelce, I think he's getting healthier, so obviously going to be, probably has tight end 1 upside. Now, Isaiah Pacheco has a juicy matchup here, but has been missing practice all week with the hamstring. I don't know if he returned to practice today. Have to get the news on that. But if Pacheco plays, is he in your lineup? And how do you view him this week? And if he doesn't play, how do you view the backfield breaking down from there?
Yeah, it's another one of those ugly backfields. I feel like it's similar to the Bears almost, but Pacheco has looked the most explosive. You drafted him the highest. I think you have to start him in most leagues. Unless you got somebody off the waiver wire, like Kyra Williams or some other draft capital, you can start over him. But I think you're going to still start him. He's still got touchdown upside. Really good. I just don't see him exploding much in any game.
Yeah, he's a guy that I think needs a touchdown in order for him to really come through from a fantasy perspective. And it makes it tough because while this offense has so much upside from a touchdown perspective, it's like every time they get down to like the 5-yard line, it's like a Patrick Mahomes underhand pass or something. Like they want to do everything but run the football conventionally.
Yeah.
So that part does scare me, but I do love this matchup here. And he did return to practice today, so looks like that would put him on track to potentially play in this game. But however, let me know what you think of this. I've kind of been talking myself into Jerick McKinnon potentially being a play, even though he's been useless through like 2 weeks now. But this just seems like the matchup where it's like, hey, the Bears suck against running backs, and Andy Reid's like, that means the pass game too.
Yeah.
So I think McKinnon has some desperation flex upside there.
No, I like McKinnon. Unfortunately, I started him in a deep league over Nico Collins last week, just thinking that, with Jacksonville, it'd be a good game for him. And
yeah,
he's given us nothing. And you drafted him late, but I was a believer coming into the year on him, just looking at the way they used him last year and in the playoffs especially too. But he's given us nothing. I mean, it's hard to start him over a lot of people, but I do like him if he's dropped in a deep league. I think he's got a lot of upside. He's going to get, the dump offs, the screen plays. They'll be there at some point.
Most definitely. Anything else you want to add to this game before we move on?
Thank God Kelsey's back. No, but Patty, take the Patty over on the yards. He's going to throw a lot in this game.
So Patrick Mahomes over on the yards, you're saying?
Yeah, I like Patty to just throw a lot in this game. The Chiefs are just going to try to figure it out, and this is a good narrative and a good game for them to do it. I don't know if it'll be pretty, but he's going to throw it a lot.
And this is plus this is also the reminder that the Bears had the choice to draft Patrick Mahomes, and they didn't. So sure, Mahomes will remind them of that. Yep. All right, let's move on to this next game here. We've got the 2-0 Dallas Cowboys, who are rolling right now, traveling to Arizona to take on the 0-2 Arizona Cardinals. This game has a 43-point total, where the Dallas Cowboys are 12.5-point road favorites here. I am going to take the under. I'm going to take Dallas to cover. I will take Dallas to win. Bruce, what say you?
No, I agree. I do have the Cowboys. I think minus 12.5 is a gimme right now. That's going to probably move a little bit. There's no way the Cards cover this game. The Dallas defense is so good. I had the over 43, but I was like super close on it. I was like, I think the Cowboys will score 30, 35 where the Cards score. So I'm fine with the under, especially since I think 43 is one of the highers of the actual slate. So there's just a lot of Dallas scoring potentially in this game.
Yeah, a lot of Dallas scoring. So it should be pretty easy on the Arizona side to decide who you're playing. Marquise Brown, any interest there?
I don't love him. I play him probably as a wide receiver 3 or a deep flex this week. I mean, he could splash for a touchdown and then you're golden, but the only guy I like in the pass game's Ertz.
And then what about well, I guess, yeah, you touched on Ertz. I like Ertz as well. I think his target share has been there week to week, so definitely like that. James Conner, he's been solid with the volume there. Do you think he sees enough volume to be fantasy relevant this week?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I like James Conner every week. I just feel like the wheels are going to fall off. They're just giving him so much usage, and he's already hurt. And I thought he probably should have sat out last week. He played through it. He's valuable every week. There's not many running backs getting that kind of workload, and so you start him every week. I'm worried about his health long term.
Yeah, I mean, he's a guy I think, I think JJ Zacharyson had mentioned it on his podcast recently that he'd probably start selling James Conner, right? Because he's getting enough volume, he's getting some good work, and talent and ability has never been the question with Conner. It's always been durability, right? Yeah. So, like you said, the wheel could fall off at any moment now. Are you holding on to a Keontae Ingram in case that happens, or are you saying I'm good? I'm good on this offense if there's no James Conner?
No, I think you got to get Ingram, and like if they're going to plan around being a running back 1, like actually giving their running back a heavy workload like they've done with Conner, then you want his replacements. It's an ugly team, but running backs is terrible this year. So anyone with high usage is golden right now.
Yeah, totally agree with that as well. And then on the Dallas side, I think it's very easy, right?
Everyone. I think
no. Yeah, I mean, CeeDee, Pollard, right? They're ones at their position. Yeah. Dak Prescott, I think, had a nice week last week, but I still view him as a QB2 for some of the same reasons we talked about with Geno Smith earlier, but probably exacerbated here.
Yeah, I started Geno over him, though.
Yeah, I would start Geno over him as well, too. Jake Ferguson, I think he has a great matchup here against Arizona. I mean, we could talk about that one. I will talk more about that one a little bit later, but okay. Any thoughts? What are your thoughts on Jake Ferguson ahead of this matchup against Arizona?
Yeah, I like him. I didn't add him much last week, but then like the broadcast, I was watching Red Zone, but they were talking about Jake Ferguson when they had that game on, and the Dallas really likes him. And they rewarded him by, giving the other 2 tight ends looks in the red zone, but he did score the first touchdown. So I think he's the tight end 1 there. And Dallas tight ends have just been good for, it seems like, a decade now. So I think he is valuable, and I would grab him. Tight ends, another ugly position this year, and you want guys in good offenses with upside, and he checks a lot of boxes for me.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, it's interesting. Jake Ferg, we do this thing every Monday. We started it a couple years ago where it was like I'd be going through the rankings of the top 12 tight ends, that from that week, and we'd start to get to a point where it basically just becomes, did you catch a touchdown or not? Like, did this tight end catch a touchdown? Because then they are a top 12 tight end.
Yep.
And then it evolved into this. Now we do this every week, which is we do a touchdown or not tight end of the week.
Okay.
Which is basically the highest scoring tight end, the highest top 12 tight end that scored a touchdown with the least amount of receptions. And it's usually somebody who no one ever starts, right? Like week 1, it was Harrison Bryant. He had 2 catches for 5 yards and a touchdown, but nobody started him. Last week, it was Jake Ferguson, and Jake Ferguson was started in a decent amount of leagues.
Yeah.
But he had 2 catches for 11 yards and a touchdown, and 3 catches.
I think it was all like the first drive or second.
Yeah.
He's going to be good, I think.
Yeah. So it was funny that he ended up there, but
funny.
Yeah, he'll get a different designation from me today.
Yeah.
Hint, hint. But let's move on to this next game. Unless you have anything else you want to add there.
No, I think we covered everything. I said only Arizona guy I would start is Zach Ertz. Like you said, he's getting I think he's averaging over 10 targets a game right now. Probably won't be year long as they, try to give the upside tight end that they drafted in the first round a little more work. Yeah.
I mean, he's another guy, right? Similar to James Conner. It's just like once the injury happens, it's like, all right,
yeah,
just gonna plug in, Trey McBride there.
Right. So there's value in the Arizona offense, even though it's terrible.
Yeah. All right, let's move on to the next matchup here. Sunday Night Football, 8:20 p.m. The 1-1 Pittsburgh Steelers traveled to Las Vegas to take on the 1-1 Las Vegas. Should be 0-2 Pittsburgh. Spoken like a true Cleveland Browns fan.
That game, man. I'm never going to get over that game.
This game has a 45-point total where the Las Vegas Raiders are 1.5-point favorites here at home. Bruce, I ask you first, where are you at with this game here?
I like the Steelers plus 1.5. It pains me to say it. And I like the unders 45 right now. I like that a lot.
Yeah, I'm with you. Give me the under. Give me Pittsburgh to cover the 1.5 and give me Pittsburgh to win this game. I guess, we'll start on the Pittsburgh side. Kenny Pickett has not looked good through 2 weeks. I mean, everyone talked about his preseason and what that looked like. And even though I started buying into it, even though I'm not a Kenny Pickett guy, but Matt Canada is kind of showing his true form here with Kenny Pickett here. Are you interested at all in the pass game against the Raiders, who are not very good against the quarterback position? Are you into George Pickens? Are you into an Allen Robinson or even a Calvin Austin here? And obviously Kenny Pickett as well.
Yeah. I mean, Kenny Pickett, I probably put him as a super flex play this week and probably the rest of the year. He's played against some tough defenses. I mean, I love our Browns defense. They've been really elite, and that was a tough game for him. He did beat us with the Pickens. George Pickens had that slant to the house. I mean, George Pickens is the guy you want in this offense over anyone, I think, personally. I think his upside's nasty. It feels like the Steelers got another Plexico Burst type talent in him. And I think he's going to help Kenny Pickett. And Kenny Pickett seems like a game manager type, but that's kind of what the Big Ben was for them. And it pains me to say, but I do think, Kenny Pickett's going to be the guy for the Steelers for, at least the next 5 years.
Yeah, no, he's definitely going to be the guy for them. I agree with you. Pickens probably a wide receiver 2 with some wide receiver 1 upside. I mean, he can make a big play happen at any moment. It seems like
he's a red zone threat too, and he's good.
Now the running back situation, everyone's absolutely killing Najee Harris. absolutely killing them. I mean, and it's crazy. You see some of the takes that get floated around there, and it's like people tweet responsibly. Like I see people saying Najee Harris is not good at football, like he sucks.
Yeah.
And it's like those takes are those are lazy takes in my opinion. Right? It's easy to look at a box score and say a guy sucks, but like why does he suck? Like why is he not performing well? And then I saw a stat. I think it was Dave Kluge that pointed it out, which is like the Steelers on the season have exactly zero rushing yards before contact. Like,
Yeah.
and then you watch the clips and you're watching Najee Harris get hit in the backfield, and it's like, oh yeah, but that guy sucks, right? The guy that ran for like 1,200 yards as a rookie, he's the guy that sucks all of a sudden, right? So I think just people be responsible out there with your takes, but are you buying? This is the get right spot.
I have him as a start,
right? Like I think he has RB1 upside because I think they're going to try to make a concerted effort to be more physical on the ground after being out physical essentially 2 weeks in a row. I think the Raiders provide a good opportunity to get right here in the run game, which I think would also make Jaylen Warren a playable flex option as an RB3 with some RB2 upside.
Yeah, I mean, I think the narrative seems to just be in the whole fantasy community that it started in preseason and then it just jumped huge after last week. But there's the Jaylen Warrens, the starter truthers. I don't buy it. I think Najee, if you go up, look up his YouTube highlights and look up his blocking, especially, like, he's going to play for the Steelers. There's no way they don't split that backfield an entire year. And Najee's he's a good physical runner. Like I said, the Steelers have had played against two really good defenses, two ugly game scripts. So I do like Najee. I don't love him long term, like in the future in Dynasty, but I think he's a good buy. If you're in a 2 to 3 year window, I think he's a good buy in your standard leagues. I do like Najee Harris, and I think he'll score a lot of touchdowns this year for the Steelers.
I like Najee to bounce back this week for sure, big time. Like you said, I think he'll hold on to that starting job. Not to say Jaylen Warren won't be involved, but
he's a good player too.
Yeah, absolutely. On the Raiders side, Josh Jacobs, is there any? He's been unproductive through 2 weeks. Do you see him potentially bouncing back this week?
Yeah, I have him as a starter this week. It might be a bad game though. That's I'm nervous about it again, but I think he's going to show, especially more than last week. And I like him still this season. You have to like Josh Jacobs. My biggest concern and the reason I didn't draft him this year a lot was because as soon as he signed that contract, when most of our drafts occurred, and he jumped up to like second round value, I was worried about his conditioning, and I think that's probably playing a part here. He was, reported to camp super late. Week 1 was probably one of his biggest games or practices that he's actually had. Week 2 was ugly. It's going to get better for Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, and the volume is there. The production just isn't following, right?
Right.
At that point,
he's a runner, man.
Yeah, so at that point, I mean, I will continue to play him unless they suddenly decide to stop giving him the volume.
Right. I mean, he led the league in yards last year. He's going to be good this year. He's just not going to be what he was last year. So he's another buy low, maybe one of the best buy lows in the whole running back fantasy right now.
Yeah, and if I recall correctly, I believe he also had a slow start to last season as well. And if I'm not mistaken, maybe not like for a lot of the weeks, but through a decent amount of I think maybe through the first couple of weeks he had a slow start. But Devontae Adams, wide receiver 1, I'm sure, right? Jacoby Myers, I don't know what his status is, if he's expected to be back this week, but I have to imagine after his week 1, he's definitely a wide receiver 2, at least for you this week. Is that the case, Bruce?
Yeah, no, Jacoby Myers was a guy gaining a lot of traction late for me. Some of my friends tipped me off on him, and he's been good. Obviously, week 1, he was just heavily involved and then had that nasty concussion. So hopefully he gets back, and he was going to be involved probably all year for the Raiders. So I like him a lot. I think you probably put him as a wide receiver 3 this week, but he could have developed into a wide receiver 2 for you. Devontae Adams, I'm nervous about him where you had to draft him. He hasn't showed us a ton. I don't know if Garoppolo can do what his other quarterbacks have. But I still think you have to love Devontae Adams, but it might not be what we thought on draft day.
Yeah, no, that's fair for sure. Definitely this week though, you're gonna have to throw him out there.
Yeah, absolutely. You have to start him.
All right, let's move on to the first of our Monday night doubleheader. The 2-0 Philadelphia Eagles travel to Tampa Bay to take on the 2-0 Tampa Bay Buccaneers. This game is on Monday Night Football, 7:15 p.m. The total is 46. The Philadelphia Eagles are 5.5-point favorites on the road here. Bruce, I'm going to kick this one to you first. Where are you at with this game?
So I had an Eagles -5.5. I like the Eagles in this game. And I had taken the under 46.
I think this is the first one we disagree on. I'm going to hit the over here.
Okay.
I like Tampa Bay to cover 5.5. I do like Philadelphia to win the game outright here. Philadelphia's pass defense has not been as strong as it was last year. Obviously, they have some changes in the secondary, which is why I think Baker Mayfield keeps rolling this week. I think, absolutely love what he can do in this matchup. I'm going to have him ranked as a QB1 just because I think game script will play into his favor. And he's got good weapons in Mike Evans and Chris Godwin. How do you see, this pass game playing out this week against Philadelphia?
So I'm not as high as Baker on you, but we ran him out of Cleveland, so I might be a little biased. But Baker looks good. The offense is going to be better than we thought in Tampa Bay. But I'm really worried about the pass blocking in this game. I think the Eagles are going to really get to Baker. Under distress, Baker, I think he's statistically been good in his career, but I don't think he's been good lately. I think if the Eagles can get to him, Roquan Smith, all that pass pressure, I think it could really hurt his game. So I really liked Chris Godwin in this game for that reason. Mike Evans is your league winner currently, but I don't know with I'm theorizing that they're going to get pressure on him. So I don't think Mike Evans gets open as deep as much this game. I think it could be a down game for him. I think he's a good sell high, and I like Godwin a lot moving forward.
No, that's a great point. I mean, that's something I don't think I considered as much, right? Like, if Philadelphia does get after Baker a little bit, is he going to now gravitate more towards Chris Godwin, who's going to run those shorter routes, as opposed to going down the field and attacking with Mike Evans, who will probably have to see a lot of Darius Slay there. So you combine, his inability to set up to get the time to, push the ball down the field, as well as, having Darius Slay, basically shadowing Mike Evans all afternoon or all evening rather. So definitely a solid point there. What about Rachaad White? I mean, there's a lot of – I feel like the fantasy community is totally split on him. Like, is he good? Is he not? Was his performance last week because he played Chicago or, was it not? Like, so what are your thoughts on Rachaad White?
So I own him a lot. I loved where you got him this year. Just similar to James Conner, the usage is there, which is everything. I think we'll talk about it in the next game with Joe Mixon, but he's another one that the usage is there, but they're not that efficient with the usage. So they're capped on their true ceilings, but every week they're going to be your RB2 and they're going to be great compared to a lot of the other running backs that are in shares, or are they even playing 10 snaps this week? It's running back's so ugly that these guys getting that heavy usage are great. I do like Rachaad White a lot. I think he's going to be serviceable all year. It just seems like he's a bad football player, but he's good enough, and he's just locked into a heavy share.
Yeah, I like Rachaad White. The player. I have a decent amount of dynasty shares of him. I don't have a whole lot of season-long shares of him just because of how my drafts hit.
Yeah,
he's a guy that I would have loved to have on my team. It just wasn't really getting him there. But I think, like you said, he's going to see the volume. He'll continue to see that volume. The matchup here is not great against Philadelphia's rush defense. But, give me the guy who's going to see 17 to 20 opportunities, and I'll let him decide what he does with them. But that's going to earn him a spot in my lineup for sure.
I think he hasn't got a lot of I don't know how many catches he has, but I think there's a narrative that he's not going to get a ton of catches this year, but I think especially in a bad game scripts, I think he could pop for. So I think it makes him safe every week, is because I think ugly games he's going to get catches, good games he's going to get touchdowns and a lot of yards. So I like him every week, really, as RB2.
Yeah. I mean, he had 17 carries each of the first 2 weeks of the season. He has 7 receptions on the year, 5 of which came in the Bears game. So
3.5 in a week, every week, 17 touches.
I mean, 21 opportunities, essentially. We're not even looking at the targets, right? So,
I like him.
I like Rachaad White a lot this week. So, on the Philadelphia side, right, Jalen Hurts, quarterback 1, Devontae Smith, and A.J. Brown. I think you pretty much got to rank them as wide receiver 1s every week. I think it's a bounce-back week for A.J. Brown. I think that, the squeaky wheel gets the grease here, so definitely like them to get A.J. Brown rolling. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, like I feel like,
and then in the run game. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, you're good. With I like Devontae Smith a lot, and I've been a huge A.J. Brown fan his whole career, but I just do think that you're seeing this pendulum swing where Devontae Smith is an elite NFL wide receiver. He showed it last week, and I think he's going to show it the remainder of the year. I just think it's going to be closer to where A.J. Brown's not going to be that top 5 guy. He might end up being a top 8 guy. It's still going to be great. Like you said, squeaky wheel gets the grease. He was, complaining. I want to say he was bitching in the middle of that game last week, and instantly 2 red zone targets. Should have caught both of them. Should have had 2 touchdowns. They got called back on holdings. I think they both got called back on holdings. So like he almost scored last week. So his game was better than it looked on paper and looking at a box score even last week for A.J. Brown. So I do think he's going to get heavy usage this week. But I think it's going to be a balanced attack. And I do think Devontae Smith is a guy that is just going to continue to just be nasty all year for you.
Yeah, definitely. No, Devontae Smith, skinny Batman's balling. So definitely got to love that. Now, staying with the pass game, Dallas Goedert, he's been non-existent through 2 weeks. Are you just going to continue to hold your nose and play him?
Yeah. I mean, there's other probably better options if you have a target share, but he's going to be another one of those. He's probably a guy you could start every week in that low catch touchdown, because he's going to be a red zone threat for them. And I think there'll probably be better days. I mean, they've just been demolishing teams. So if there's a good game script, you'll probably see Dallas Goedert pop for 5 catches, 70 yards. He'll have big games. There'll be better days for him.
Yeah, I mean, it's just so different than last year, because last year he was so consistent.
Yeah,
right. Like you could almost pencil in every week he was going to see 4 to 6 catches for anywhere between 40 to 60 yards, and he was going to finish on the year with 800 receiving yards. 5 somewhere near 5 touchdowns. Like you could pretty much just like pencil that in for him.
Yeah.
But we haven't really seen that yet. So he's another guy. I think we see it. We'll see the pendulum swing back in his direction. So he's a guy I think I would probably try to buy low on from a tight end perspective.
There's not many guys that have his upside, and I liked him a lot just because I love the Eagles this year. I think they're just going to continue to demolish. I do think the Chiefs stole a Super Bowl from them last year. They were a better team on paper, and they want revenge this year. They're going to play good, and they are going to run more, and they're just a really solid team all around.
Yeah, definitely. Speaking of the running game, DeAndre Swift, did he do enough last week in your eyes?
What more do you want from him? No, what a great story though. I didn't even realize, like I probably would have drafted him more if I realized that he went to high school, like what they say, like 30 minutes down the road. Yeah. Great story last week when they were interviewing him too. He didn't even realize he had that many yards. He was just in focus in the game. He's definitely going to see more work. I did hear a lot of Kenneth Gainwell. I was even talking to a buddy who was from Philadelphia, and he's like, "Oh, they just keep talking about Kenneth Gainwell on the radio," and then Gainwell gets hurt. Swift's the guy. He has the bigger contract. I don't see how you go back to Gainwell as your starter after that last week. Swift looks good, and get Swifty.
That's Swifty, baby. Absolutely.
No, I think it might be good all year for you if you have Swift. Like I said, the Eagles are going to demolish teams, and if he gets 80 yards on the ground every week, that's going to be RB2 this year.
Yeah, man, it's definitely. I love DeAndre Swift. People have been listening to this show. I've loved DeAndre Swift.
I wish I would have drafted him more, man.
Yeah,
I was on him early, and everyone's talked me off. And they're like Gainwell, and I got Rashad Penny shares. Like it's like a penny stock, literally. No pun intended. I want the Swift. That's the Google share, man.
Yeah, right. Oh man. All right, let's move on to this next game here. I think that was it on that game. Let's move on to the last game of the week, Monday Night Football again. The second of the doubleheader. The 1-1 Los Angeles Rams traveling to Cincinnati to take on the 0-2 Cincinnati Bengals. This game is at 8:15 p.m. has a 43.5 point total. Cincinnati Bengals are 2.5 point home favorites, and this is still with Joe Burrow's availability in doubt. Zach Taylor, I think he practiced today, or he was at practice today. Zach Taylor said that he'll be day to day. If you listen to the show, coaches, we say this all the time, coaches are liars.
Yeah.
And day to day doesn't actually mean day to day. Day to day typically means week to week.
I got a good example of that actually recently.
Go ahead.
David Montgomery, after the game, told reporters, I'm probably going to be out a couple weeks. And then in the presser, Dan Campbell said he's day to day.
Yeah.
So I don't think Montgomery plays this week. There's still people thinking they could buy low on Jamar Gibbs. That door should be slammed. You hold on to that guy. But yeah, I think Montgomery's probably out this week and probably out 2 weeks. But that's a great example where the coach was like, yeah, he's day to day. And he literally like 30 minutes before that said, I'm going to need a couple weeks. Like,
yeah,
trust the player that knows their body, not the coach that wants him to play. You know what I mean?
Yeah, most definitely. Or the coach that has some extra, incentive to fabricate the timeline here.
Right.
So yeah. If Joe Burrow does play, do you trust him this week?
I think he plays too. I don't know if he should play. I think he plays. I think with the
sorry. Before we even jump into that, I don't think we didn't talk on the total or the sides or anything.
No,
so I'm gonna take the over here. I'm gonna take the Rams to cover the 2.5. I'm gonna take the Rams to win this game outright.
Yes.
Where are you with that, Bruce?
I like that. I do Rams plus 2.5. What was the over total? I don't know why I didn't pencil that down.
43.5.
43.5. Yeah, I like that. I think it'll be a competitive game, even if Burrow was out. It's Jake Browning, so I guess that changes things. But yeah, I think the Rams, they're back, really. It was kind of funny. We were watching that game last week with San Fran, and I was like, they're kind of like a Moneyball San Francisco 49ers team. Like they, the only thing they're missing is an elite tight end. But they do have Puka.
Wait, Tyler Higbee's not elite?
I mean, he's not George Kittle. That's all I meant.
I'm just messing.
I'm saying he's a Moneyball Kittle, right? Like Puka is the biggest Moneyball guy you could get right now. Yeah. And Kyra Williams, another Moneyball guy. Like they literally have this efficient offense that's getting all this work. They look good. Stafford's been a good quarterback his whole career, besides last year and the other years he's hurt. So, I think he's a lock, almost 300 yards a week right now. And I don't see what's changing. I think the Rams are only going to get better, especially if they just slow roll, get Cooper Kupp fully healthy, make sure there's any injury in that leg and the hamstring's fully healed. If it's week 6, week 8, that's fine. They're playing up right now. The Rams might be real all year.
Yeah.
No, team entering this season. It's crazy.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you there.
We're going to win this game, like you said. Absolutely. I think the Bengals are way worse than the public realizes.
So if Joe Burrow does play, are you playing him?
Yeah, I think you have to, right? Unless you I don't know who you would start over him unless.
I think we talked about this, you'd have to take it up to the hour essentially, right? Yeah. With Burrow and you. I mean, ideally,
if you have Burrow and Stafford, that's the only way I don't start Burrow.
That's exactly
why you just start Stafford anyways.
That's exactly what we said, right?
Yeah.
Greg and I said this, I think on Monday. was that you would have to pick up Stafford and just hope
Yeah.
that if Burrow doesn't play, you play Stafford. But like you said, you might play Stafford anyway.
Burrow's drafted so high though, like you have to.
I'd also pick up Baker because I think you would get the actives and actives before at least the Tampa Bay Philly game starts.
Like a difference an hour or something between the games. That's a good strategy.
So you could probably get the actives and actives should be out by like 6:45, I would think, and then that would give you 30 minutes to decide whether you want to play Baker or not, or play Stafford. Which direction would you go out of curiosity in that if you were going to go Stafford or Baker?
Baker or Stafford? Yeah, I think I'd go Stafford. I just think Stafford's a lock for. I mean, Baker's playing really good, but I just think Stafford's got the best floor out of a lot of quarterbacks, and
that's true. That's true. I think Stafford does have a ceiling, floor. Yeah, we haven't seen the ceiling yet. I mean, we haven't even, like Puka is doing all this, hasn't even caught a touchdown pass yet. So
San Fran, like they were saying, like San Fran destroyed the Rams both times they played last year. So like you have to think that was actually a really positive direction last week for the Rams, and it wasn't pretty, but they were moving the ball. They looked good. I think, like you said, I think they're going to beat the Bengals. Like it could get ugly. Let's slam the Rams this week.
So, with all that being said, right? So, how do you view the pass game for the Bengals, right? Like, T. Higgins, Jamar Chase. Like, do you think that they come through regardless of who the quarterback is, and I guess how do you downgrade them if Browning is in there and Burrow's not?
So I did a trade today in my home league that our buddy Rob's in actually too, but I traded ETN to get T. Higgins. I like T. Higgins moving forward. And obviously Chase is rough right now. If Burrow's out, I don't think you want to play Chase. I think it'll be a lot of short passes to T. Higgins, dump offs to Joe Mixon. If Burrow plays, it might even be similar to that game script, but obviously Chase has that upside with Burrow. They have a great connection. Every game they've played together is besides for this year, has been pretty good. And I think they were on like historical trajectories with each other. They're just both nasty athletes, but they're both, with Burrow not having the strength in his calf to do the deep ball he's also been under a lot of pressure when he's played. And I think, obviously the calf's going to hurt your mobility. So like, that's the biggest problem I think is, do they feel like they can protect him enough this week to play him? And is the calf healed enough to play as well? So I'm worried about Burrow playing. He's going to take it down to the game, but I think with the way that they need him to play, I think he ultimately will play in this game, but it's going to be quick passes. And if they don't, if they let him sit in the pocket, they're foolish, and they're, that's a lot of money. And Joe Burrow's, that's a stud athlete. You can't just run him out there like that just because you're 0-2. So I really hope he's healthy enough to go.
Yeah. I mean, I just have trouble, I feel like talent wins out, right? So I got to treat these guys as wide receiver twos.
Yeah.
If Burrow doesn't play, if Burrow does play, I think we've seen enough from Higgins to still have trust in him as a wide receiver one. I think the Jamar Chase thing they're gonna figure it out at some point. I've been saying for weeks, like a couple weeks now, I would go buy Jamar Chase, right? Like, this is the cheapest it's going to be at this point, right? And if Burrow misses more time, it's cheaper again. But this is a player that the community was talking about being the number one player in fantasy.
He's drafted like 1.5 or 1.8 or something.
Go as high as like the second pick.
I mean, he was drafted over Jefferson in a couple of my leagues. I somehow got Jefferson at pick 4 in a league, like crazy, but people love Chase.
But to that point, right? Like, you can get him for like pennies on the dollar right now.
No, right? He's a good buy low. I just don't know if you have to pay too much to then sit him this week. You have to consider, if you're 0-2, that's not a good move to make. But he might have another ugly game.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's definitely possible, right? Like, just thinking out loud, like if I can go to the Jamar Chase manager, maybe they need help at running back, right? I just picked up like a Jerome Ford, right? And maybe I can take a Jerome Ford and package him with, I don't know, like a Drake London or a Garrett Wilson or someone who's, wide receiver 2. Like, okay, this sounds crazy, would you trade Nico Collins and Nico Collins away to get Jamar Chase?
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So
I
then
do like Nico though, but
I like Nico a lot.
don't
Don't get me wrong.
Like you
I like
said,
Nico a
talent wins
lot.
out. Jamar Chase drafted so high. He's great. He's going to be a good player. He's still going to have 1,000 yards. He's still going to probably have 8 touchdowns. I just don't know if Burrow misses time, then obviously Jamar Chase is not going to be as explosive with Jake Browning. There's just no way. But yeah, Chase is still going to be who we thought he was when you drafted him. It's just, is it going to be short term? Likely not.
Yeah, and then so Joe Mixon, we haven't talked about him much.
Yeah.
And, I think he's RB1. He has RB1 upside regardless of who plays in this game. I think the Rams are beatable on the ground. I think regardless of who the quarterback is, the game plan should be to feed Mixon because you want to protect your quarterback, whether it's a young Jake Browning or an injured Joe Burrow. So I do like Joe Mixon a lot this week.
No, I love him. Like I said, he's another one of those guys. He's probably the number one. He's leading the committee of high usage and efficient running backs. But he's by far the best one of them, and he gets so much usage. And it was like hard to watch last week. But then he looked at the box score and he felt like he should have way more points. But he was so heavily involved. He's going to be involved every week, especially if Burrow misses time. He's going to be so involved. Give me Joe Mixon. And you got him pretty valuable this year. We kind of knew he was going to be, and he has been heavily involved. You know, they were talking up the rookies and the other running backs in training camp. None of that came to tuition as of yet. I don't think it's going to. Maybe later down the road, but that would be, the season's over for them, and they're just giving the young backs, work. But I think the Bengals will turn this around, and hopefully, like I said, hopefully Burrow can get healthy. If he has to sit a week. Go 0-3. You're still one of the best quarterbacks in the league, and you can come back from 0-3.
Yeah, definitely.
Risk your health. I mean, you saw Rodgers is another good example with the calf injury, turn it into an Achilles. Like, don't risk it, man.
Why'd you have to bring that up? I was finally getting over it.
No. Hey, we lost Chubb. We're even as fans, man. This is a crazy season.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Well, before we move on, we've got to finish the Rams side. Puka, high end wide receiver 2.
Oh gosh, wide receiver 1 maybe this week.
Yeah, maybe, right? I mean, if he scores a touchdown, he probably is a wide receiver 1. Top 3, top 5 at the position in PPR leagues. Stafford, QB2, we talked about him.
Yeah.
Some QB1 upside.
Another low ceiling in this game, but he's going to be involved. He can get you 15 points.
Tutu Atwell, a wide receiver 3 with some wide receiver 2 upside.
He's looked good. Honestly, I'm a little worried about him long-term with, obviously Cup will play at some point, so Tutu you have to lower, but he's been involved, and I think that having the deep ball and 6 targets a game in this offense looks pretty good.
Let's see. Ty. It looks like Ty pretty much wants us to set his entire lineup. Ty,
This is easy.
Is it? Okay.
Yeah, start Jalen Hurts, start Christian McCaffrey. You start Najee over James Cook, right?
I think I lean James Cook, but I will have Najee in the flex.
Okay.
Wait,
and then he's got 1 flex. Who's his tight end? Oh, Hawkinson? Yeah, start Hawkinson.
Wait, he literally said he traded Najee and Kirk for Jacobs. So you don't have Najee anymore. So now you have Jacobs.
Oh, yeah. So start Jacobs. Yeah, absolutely. So CMC, he has CMC and Jacobs. That's good.
Start Waddle. Start Godwin.
Yep. Who he's got Ayuk.
Well, is Ayuk going to go tonight?
Oh, yeah. I guess if he's game time, you probably start him at wide receiver.
If he's a game, like we were talking about this yesterday, breaking down Thursday Night Football. If he goes, like it's hard to trust him.
True, it is like an AC joint or something. But
it's like
he looked like he was playing through pain last week.
Yeah, most definitely, right?
Yeah, you're right. Sit him and wait. I mean, he's got Dotson's 10-team league.
Yeah, I would start Waddle. I'd start Godwin, right? Like, I mean, Waddle's got the concussion, so there's a concern there.
Yeah, I think he'll be all right this week.
if he doesn't go, then yeah, you could start Dotson in his place.
Yeah.
And then the Smitty, which wide receiver should I start? I think I know my answer here. He's between Ayuk, DK Metcalf, or Nico Collins. Where are you going, Bruce?
I'm going DK, but another time we get to talk up Nico Collins and Brandon Ayuk. I'm fine with that. I like both guys this year.
I may be crazy here, but I'm going Nico Collins, man. I'm going Nico Collins.
Dude, my buddy, the guy that I got T. Higgins from, he's like, I'm just really banking on Nico Collins being good for me. And I'm like, I think he's Stroud's number one, like fingers crossed, but he looks like he is CJ Stroud's number one receiver, and they look like they're going to throw the ball a ton.
Yeah. I mean, and my co-host Greg's been all over Nico Collins, so definitely love that.
I had Stroud as my number one quarterback in this draft. I drafted Anthony Richardson for fantasy, but I thought CJ Stroud, and he's looked good. He's definitely looks better than Bryce Young so far. I mean, knock on wood.
But, yeah, I agree with you. I had CJ Stroud as my number one guy.
Nice.
Pre-draft.
Man, we get along. We just met yesterday. Like, it's crazy.
Fantasy-wise, I do agree. Anthony Richardson had to be the guy because of the legs. But if you ask me, like, which guy would have the career for the next 10, 15 years, I would have said Stroud. So
nice.
All right, let's get into my starts of the week this week. So I'm going to just, go through who I've got. And at the quarterback position, going back to the well, man, give me Kirk Cousins. Currently, your quarterback one in fantasy, has a great matchup in what should be a wonderful scoring environment for fantasy managers, playing in a game with the highest total but the closest spread. Gotta love that combination here. Both teams have playoff aspirations, looking for their first win this season. Start Kirk Cousins up this week, man.
No, I love that. I would also start Herbert.
Yes, also start Herbert.
It's gonna be a fun game. And Kirk Cousins has to be like the most highly of like, if you haven't watched the Netflix doc, go watch it. Like Kirk Cousins is just the most class act family guy. He just looks so amazing, and I'm just happy for his success this year. Honestly, I love Kirk.
Yeah, no, Kirk is great, man. I was saying it last week. Like in the offseason, we do our breakouts, our busts, our sleepers. For like 3 years in a row, Kirk Cousins was a sleeper at the quarterback position because he's just so undervalued in terms of ADP versus like where he finishes at the end of the season. And I think finally people are catching up. So
I mean, they went out, got him a nice stud tight end. Addison looks like the breakout rookie. You still got Justin Jefferson, who's maybe going to break the receiving yard record this year. Like, there's a lot to like in that Minnesota offense.
Yeah, a lot to like. Just in time for them to ship him out and bring in Caleb Williams, from what I've been reading.
No, he might be coming back.
Yeah, no, most
his dad said he might be coming back.
His dad. His dad's going to be coming back.
His Arizona might get the. It's another.
Wait to see what the draft order looks like.
Yeah, right. Right.
My running back start of the week, Joe Mixon versus the Rams. This one's multi-layered here for me. Mixon has been disappointing through 2 weeks, but so is the entire Cincinnati offense. The peripherals look very good for Joe Mixon. 74% of the team's rush share, a 14% target share. He's had 18 opportunities or 18 touches in each of the last 2 games. That's only led to 16.8 PPR points on the season. With Burrow banged up and or missing Monday's game, I think leaning on Joe Mixon makes a ton of sense, especially when you consider that the Rams allow the 8th most PPR points to the running back position through the first 2 weeks of the season, going back to the last week of last season as well. So I think a nice bounce back week for Joe Mixon this week.
I agree with you. I like him a lot this week. He also played the Browns.
Let's move on to the rookie, Joe. There you go. The rookie, Zay Flowers, going up against the Indianapolis Colts for my wide receiver start of the week. He's been balling through 2 weeks now. Gets a real juicy matchup here against the Indianapolis Colts, who allow the 2nd most PPR points to the wide receiver position. If you go back to last year and the first 2 weeks of this season, he did take a back seat to Mark Andrews last week in terms of targets, but he led all Ravens wide receivers in snaps played. And now OBJ, Odell Beckham Jr., possibly banged up here. Another Cleveland Brown because, former Cleveland Brown great. We don't claim you don't claim them. But another great opportunity here to have a big game against an Indianapolis secondary that's been absolutely abused by opposing pass.
Oh yeah, they're terrible.
Yeah. So start up the rookie Zay Flowers. And last but not least, I told you we'd talk about him. My tight end start of the week, Jake Ferguson, going up against Arizona. I was ready to cut bait with Ferguson this week in lieu of some perceivably better options. But then I remembered they're playing the Cardinals. Over the last 2 weeks, over the first 2 weeks of this season, Arizona has seen, on average, opposing teams target the tight end position 28.7% of the time. That's the second highest rate in the league. First is the Giants. Go take all the overs on the George Kittle props.
Yes.
Just saying. But he's sixth in target share at the position, 17.7% of the team targets. I like him this week. Should come through after back-to-back, somewhat underwhelming weeks from him.
No, like I said earlier, too, it seems like Dallas really likes him and the matchups there. I think he would have done better if the game stayed closer last week even. So he might catch a touchdown again early and get a lot more work this week.
Yeah, definitely agree there. Well, look, that's all we got for today. Bruce, I definitely want to say thank you.
Thank you, man,
for coming out, man. I brought you in last minute, and you didn't even flinch. You came on here and you tolerated me for an hour. So definitely appreciate that. And make sure you go give Bruce a follow at Blake_Bruce. If you're into sports cards, go hit him up on Twitter. Go Absolutely. Find him there. Great guy. Bruce, anything you want to add before we close this one out?
No, just again, thank you so much for the opportunity and stay blessed. And hopefully this isn't the only time we do this. I'm looking forward to continue growing the fantasy football community.
Most definitely. Well, everybody, have fun this weekend. Remember, the games are going to be there. Your scores will update when your receiver catches that 1 yard pass. Just stay locked in, watch the games, enjoy football, spend time with family. But until next time, we'll see y'all on Monday. Have a good one, and we're out of here. Peace.
Thank you.